Perez Hilton spent 21 days hospitalized in Las Vegas in March 2026 with severe sepsis stemming from a perforated gastrointestinal ulcer. Most of the medical details come from Hilton's own March 23 account rather than independently released hospital records. Here's the sequence he described. He had influenza for approximately a week and took unspecified flu medication without food. He developed an ulcer that perforated, allowing gastrointestinal contents and infection to spread outside the digestive tract. His abdominal pain became so severe that he could no longer walk, and an ambulance took him to Southern Hills Hospital. Doctors initially had difficulty locating the perforation despite repeated X-rays, CT scans, and ultrasounds. After about 5 days, he underwent laparoscopic surgery to locate the source and remove infection from around his abdominal organs. He later required another procedure to drain infected fluid, reportedly including fluid around his lungs. His heart rate became unstable enough to require cardiac medication. He developed an additional infection while hospitalized. For a period, he could not eat normally and received nutrition and medication intravenously. He described roughly 2 weeks of becoming progressively sicker, followed by about a week of gradual improvement before discharge. He went home with a PICC line extending toward his heart so he could continue receiving medication. His recovery was also complicated. Shortly after discharge, he developed a massive, completely occlusive deep vein thrombosis in his right leg, extending from his groin to below his calf. He was readmitted and underwent a thrombectomy to remove it. Prolonged hospitalization, surgery, infection, and immobility are all substantial risk factors for a DVT. On April 7th, he reported that he could finally walk again, although doing so remained extremely painful. Hilton subsequently said the near-death experience produced a religious or spiritual awakening. He publicly apologized for some of his past conduct and said the hospitalization changed how he viewed his children, family, and priorities.
To that, let's get the official medical terminology on the board. This phenomenon is known as sepsis-associated encephalopathy, or SAE. Simply put, it's a physical brain injury resulting from that systemic sepsis, and it can show up as anything from temporary confusion and delirium all the way down to a deep coma. And again, the defining characteristic here is that this severe cognitive damage is happening without the infection ever once breaching the brain tissue. So to figure out how this remote destruction actually goes down, we really need to shrink down to the cellular level. Think of the human brain as this incredibly heavily guarded fortress. Now, in a normal, healthy state, its magnificent outer wall, the blood-brain barrier, is totally intact. You've got these tight junctions between the blood vessel cells that act like a watertight seal, perfectly protecting your sensitive brain tissue from any harmful substances floating around in the bloodstream. But during sepsis, your body is fighting a massive infection elsewhere, right? So it's pumping out huge amounts of inflammatory chemicals. Those chemicals travel up to the brain and physically weaken those tight junctions. The barrier basically becomes leaky. Suddenly, fluid, rogue immune cells, and inflammatory substances just flood into areas they ordinarily cannot reach, causing massive swelling and inflammation right inside the fortress. Down at the intracellular level, this really tragic cascade begins. Step 1, this sepsis physically damages the mitochondria. You remember those from biology class, right? The literal energy-producing powerhouses inside our cells. Well, because of that damage, step 2 is an inevitable catastrophic power failure. The brain cells just lose their ability to produce energy, and this is an absolutely crucial point. Even if blood flow returns and oxygen is present, the broken mitochondria simply can't use it. Moving to step 3, oxidative stress starts tearing apart cell membranes, proteins, you name it, even DNA. And finally, step 4, the severe, prolonged inflammation triggers programmed cell death. The neurons die off, and those vital synaptic connections between them are completely, permanently lost. And while those cells are dying off, the environment around them is descending into pure chemical chaos. The brain's delicate chemical balance is entirely disrupted. That inflammation directly scrambles how dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, glutamate, and acetylcholine signal to each other. But wait, it actually gets worse. Remember, sepsis is a whole-body crisis. If the kidneys or the liver start to fail, which happens a lot, they stop filtering the blood. That means highly toxic metabolic waste products back up and accumulate right there in the brain. Throw in electrolyte abnormalities, severe glucose spikes and crashes, high fevers, and acid-base changes, and you've got a completely toxic wasteland for any neurons trying to survive. And sadly, this cellular siege, it isn't random. The inflammation heavily targets some of the most critical parts of what makes us, well, us. It hits the hippocampus, which controls our memory, the frontal cortex, which governs our executive judgment and attention, the amygdala, regulating our emotional stability, and the hypothalamus, which manages our stress responses. When these specific, highly specialized areas are compromised, the effects on a person's actual mind and personality are incredibly profound. When SAE is raging during an acute bout of sepsis, this is what the healthcare workers and, frankly, terrified family members are seeing at the bedside. The brain involvement manifests as really profound cognitive impairment. Patients might show severe confusion, an inability to follow even a basic conversation, and just deep, deep disorientation. That damage to the amygdala and frontal cortex we just talked about, outwardly, that shows up as intense agitation, paranoia, and sometimes terrifying hallucinations. You'll see massive memory gaps, really alarming personality changes, and unusual, totally unresponsive sleepiness. In the most extreme cases of this brain injury, patients will suffer seizures or slip entirely into a coma.